Okay, breathing stuff. I'm going to be going over the gearing system that you can work yourself through based on the kind of breathing that you're doing. There's 5 different gears that you can work through. Ideally, you start at gear 1 always, and then you work yourself up to 5 without skipping any gears, and then you sort of down-regulate yourself the same way. I'm going to be going over this in the context of a workout, but this applies to everyday life as well. If you find yourself in a stressful situation, how can you down-regulate yourself? Do you know how to get yourself back down to a normal state from a physiological standpoint? So it's important to understand the gear system, because I think without making it too complicated, just next time you're warming up for a workout, just check your breathing, see where you are. I bet 5 minutes in, you're probably mouth breathing. So mouth breathing, inhale and exhale, that's gear 5. That should be reserved for very extreme max effort power outputs, or in the sense of real life, like the most high stress situations, trying to clear all the waste from your system in a very stressful situation. So if you're mouth breathing in your warm up, you don't really have anywhere else to go. You're just gonna slowly ramp up until you kind of max out, and then that's it. You have nowhere else to go from an energy standpoint. Breathing in and of itself in this way is going to be considered a skill, and then like rowing or running or cycling, like that's a skill. Don't stack a new skill on another skill and expect to be good at the new skill. Kind of figure it out, just like lying on your back, and figure out the breathing pattern. A lot of people haven't done nasal breathing in any sort of real capacity before, so it's going to be difficult and it's going to feel like you can't get enough air. It's good to experience that when you're just lying on the floor, not when you are on a bike or on a rower and it feels like you're gonna suffocate. It's not fun. My other little caveat before getting into this is, if you're one of those people who like religiously tracks their calories and their heart rate and you're very metric driven, looking at you Apple Watch people, I would say like don't look at your heart rate, don't look at the power output on any of these, because again, it's a new skill. Don't tie any sort of expectations to this new skill. Learn the skill and then try to get better at it. Okay, so gear 1, nasal breathing in and out equal cadence. For most people starting off on this, it's gonna be a pretty short cadence, probably 2 seconds in, 2 seconds out. I think I was doing, in this video, 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out, and I was doing about 20 pulls per minute. So I would do an inhale for 1 full stroke cycle and then an exhale for 1 full stroke cycle. So that's gonna be weird enough for a lot of people, because a lot of times when you're rowing, you're used to inhaling on the pull or just exhaling on the pull. So having to kind of work through the full cycle during an inhale and an exhale is going to be different for a lot of people. And just so you know, I go through gears 1 through 4 for 90 seconds each on the rower, and then I do a minute in gear 5, just so you know what's coming up. So your goal while you're going through this is basically to find the highest power output that you can get while still maintaining that cyclical breathing, just a consistent inhale, exhale all through the nose. Again, for most people, try to start with a smaller cadence, like 2 seconds, and then you can work up to a bigger cadence, like 3, 4, 5 second inhales. But while you're doing some sort of exercise, it's gonna be difficult to get up to that. Gear 2, you get to ramp it up a little bit. So now I'm doing a power inhale, and then I'm still doing a controlled exhale. So my goal in gear 2 is really to maximize, or maybe not maximize, but definitely increase the amount of oxygen I'm getting in with each inhale. So I'm definitely gonna get a lot more oxygen in, and then I'm not necessarily forcing it out, I'm just letting it come out. So whatever cycle you were holding for gear 1, it's probably gonna be similar for the exhale on gear 2. So I do a powerful inhale, and then here I'm doing like a 3 second exhale as I go through the 1.5 minutes of rowing. And like I said before we got started, don't get caught up on the numbers. Like, I have this on watts, and I think watts are a good thing to look at. Don't really care about the number. The only thing you're really looking for is that from gear 1 to gear 2, the power goes up. So for example, on Monday, if you go from 100 watts in gear 1 to 150 watts in gear 2, and then on Thursday you only get up to 130 watts in gear 2, don't get hung up on that stuff. Just be happy that you were putting out more power in gear 2 than you were in gear 1. That's really the only goal. Until you get a really good like I would say level of competency with this style of breathing, then you can worry more about the numbers. Gear 3, so this is kind of the transition from aerobic over to anaerobic, depending on how good you are at kind of dealing with CO2. So in gear 3, you're going power nasal in and then a power nasal out as well. So it's a... So very powerful inhale and exhale, but still just going through the nose. Again, gear 3, don't worry about the amount that you jump, but the power output should increase. And again, you're trying to just find like the highest level of power you can put out while still maintaining that breathing pattern. Basically going beyond that without changing your breathing would be like passing out. So there should be a logical place for you to stop. And as I said before, gear 3 is really the transition from aerobic to anaerobic. The point of being able to manipulate this gear system, if you will, is to sort of push back the anaerobic threshold. So the longer you can stay working aerobically, which is just using oxygen to create energy, it's way more efficient than anaerobic energy. Anaerobic is great for like very quick bursts, but if you're trying to do a long workout and you're just relying on the anaerobic energy pathways, it's just a very inefficient way to go about it. So being able to spend more time in gears 1 and 2, it basically just leaves a lot left in the tank. So when you really want to push or really need to push, if you're looking at like a competitive environment, then you still have a ton in the bank. If you're mouth breathing 5 minutes into a workout, like you don't have anywhere left to go. Like that's it, you're sort of maxed out. Gear 4, you can finally open your mouth. So it's gonna be a power nasal inhale and then a powerful exhale out the mouth. So it'll be like, kind of like that. Again, still ramping up from a power perspective. So again, gear 3 to gear 4, you're now working largely anaerobically. It's like oxygen is still involved, but it's more of a reuptake consideration at this point. It's not his primary source of energy. But now gear 4, you're pretty much anaerobic, and now again, you're gonna get a little bit of bump in power, or at least you should. That's really what you're targeting. Gear 3 to gear 4, a little bit more power. Just gives you a little bit extra to push. So if you're doing a high intensity interval workout, you can expect to spend quite a bit of time in gear 4, and then during the rest periods, hopefully dropping yourself down at least 1, if not 2 gears, just to get yourself recovered. Okay, and gear 5. This is just full on mouth breathing. So ideally you save this for a time where you need a big boost in power and you need energy very quickly. It cannot be sustained for very long, and you pretty much want to collapse once you're done. Once you're sort of out of energy and you hit that wall, that's it. You don't really have anywhere else to go. So again, going back to the point of having these different gears, you don't want to be mouth breathing early on. This is like in case of emergency only. This should not be your default setting when you start a workout. But again, as you would expect, a bump from gear 4 to gear 5, higher power output. This should be your highest power output, but again, not something that's sustainable for a long period of time and purely anaerobic. And then the recovery phase. This is where you want to start working yourself back down the gears. So having an understanding of different steps and breathing patterns, it can get you to down regulate and get your heart rate back under control a lot quicker than just collapsing on the floor and sort of like violently panting for a few minutes and almost like dry heaving. I understand the feeling, believe me, but it's not a very efficient tool for recovery and getting your heart rate back down. So use the same steps on the way up that you do on the way down. Like if you did a max effort push on something and you were mouth breathing at the end, just bring it down. Nasal in, mouth out, until you can get to nasal in, nasal out, and then power nasal in, and then controlled nasal exhale, until you can get all the way down to something reasonable is like a 3-second inhale, 3-second exhale. If you can do that 3 or 4 times, that's basically full recovery. Although the guys at Power Speed Endurance, they say that you should get to a 3-second inhale, 8-second exhale for 3 reps. That's when you're recovered. And if you want to find out more about this stuff, this is a very low-level explanation and demonstration of the gear system. If you want like more intricate breathing patterns and to understand more about the mechanics, go to powerspeedendurance.com. A lot of resources on there. These are not my ideas. I've just been learning about the stuff from them. I'm just a champion of their ideas because I feel like this breathing thing, there's something to it. Give it a try.